In South Africa's northern Cape, a tranquil pool hides one of the world's deepest freshwater caves, Bushman's Hole, or Boesmansgat. This vertical submerged cave plunges into darkness, testing the limits of human endurance and technology. Its depths have become legendary among divers, a benchmark for those daring enough to face its dangers. But Bushman's Hole is not just a site of beauty, it's a place of tragedy, where ambition and nature collide. The story that unfolds here is one of loss, determination, and the ultimate test of the human spirit. On December 17, 1994, 20-year-old Deon Dreyer vanished during a dive in Bushman's Hole. A sudden blackout at 50 meters sent him into the abyss, beyond rescue and recovery. His body came to rest nearly 900 feet below, unreachable by the divers of his day. For a decade, Deon's fate haunted the diving community, a cautionary tale and a symbol of the cave's unforgiving nature. His parents, Theo and Marie, were left without closure, their son lost in the cold darkness. The mystery of Deon Dreyer became part of Bushman's Hole's legend. 10 years later, Dave Shaw, a meticulous Australian diver and former airline pilot, set his sights on Bushman's Hole. In October 2004, Shaw descended to a record 270 meters, pushing the boundaries of technical diving. On the cave floor, his light revealed a preserved body, Deon Dreyer. Shaw surfaced not just as a record holder, but as the man who solved a decade-old mystery. The discovery deeply moved him, transforming his achievement into a mission. Shaw knew what he had to do next. He would attempt the impossible, bring Deon home. Shaw promised Deon's parents he would recover their son's body. He assembled a team, including deep diving expert Don Shirley, and meticulously planned the operation. The mission required precision, custom equipment, and a support network at multiple depths. The risks were immense. Body recoveries at such depths are fraught with danger and unpredictability. Despite warnings, Shaw's resolve was unshakable. The stage was set for a dive that would test every limit. Deon Dreyer was a passionate, skilled young diver, drawn to the unknown and the challenge of deep caves. At 20, he was respected by his peers for his competence and enthusiasm. The 1994 dive was meant to support a record attempt, a dream opportunity for Deon. He was trusted with critical tasks, surrounded by friends and fellow adventurers. No one sensed the tragedy to come. The abyss called, and Deon answered, unaware it would be his final descent. The sun beat down on the northern Cape on December 17, 1994, casting a stark contrast between the hot, arid landscape and the cool, inviting waters of Bushman's Hole. For the team of divers assembled at the site, it was a day of important work. Their primary objective was to prepare the cave for Nuno Gomez's planned record dive, which meant establishing a secure descent line to a depth of 150 meters. Deon Dreyer was a key member of the support team for this task. He, along with his dive partner and other members of the group, began their descent in the late afternoon. The dive plan was straightforward, a routine procedure for divers of their caliber. Yet in this extreme environment, no dive is ever truly routine. Deon's role was to assist another diver in managing the reel for the shot line. As they descended, the world above faded away. The brilliant sunlight was quickly swallowed by the depths, replaced by the narrow beams of their dive lights cutting through the immense darkness. The water in Bushman's Hole is exceptionally clear, but the sheer scale of the underwater void can be disorienting. Down they went, past the familiar markers, into a zone where the ambient pressure begins to exert a powerful and insidious influence on the human body. The team communicated through hand signals, their movements economical and practiced, the sound of their own breathing filling their ears. Everything appeared to be proceeding as planned until they reached a depth of approximately 50 meters. At this depth, divers breathing compressed air are susceptible to a condition known as nitrogen narcosis. Often described as a feeling of drunkenness or euphoria, it can impair judgment, slow reaction times, and lead to irrational behavior. While experienced divers learn to manage its effects, its onset can be unpredictable and its severity can vary from person to person and dive to dive. It was at this critical depth that the first signs of trouble began to surface. The smooth, coordinated operation was about to unravel with terrifying speed. The first indication that something was wrong was a change in Deon's behavior. Reports from his fellow divers suggest he may have signaled to ascend, perhaps feeling the overwhelming effects of narcosis or another physiological issue. Panic is a diver's greatest enemy, an emotional cascade that can turn a manageable problem into a fatal one. In the deep, cold, and dark environment, With judgment already clouded, a moment of panic can be a death sentence. For Deon Dreyer, that moment had arrived. The chain of events that followed was swift, irreversible, and tragic, witnessed by those who were powerless to stop it. At 50 meters below the surface, the situation escalated rapidly. It is believed that Deon, likely overcome by severe nitrogen narcosis, lost control. His breathing rate would have skyrocketed, a physical response to the rising panic. This exertion would have increased the carbon dioxide levels in his body, further worsening his cognitive impairment and creating a vicious cycle of anxiety and physiological stress. His dive partner, recognizing the distress, tried to intervene. Rescue attempts in such conditions are incredibly difficult. A panicked diver is strong and uncoordinated, and trying to manage them while also managing one's own life support system at depth is a monumental task. According to eyewitness accounts from the other divers in the water, Deon's movements became erratic. In his disoriented state, he may have lost his grip on the shot line, his only physical connection to the surface and the planned ascent path. He began to sink. The rescue effort became desperate. One of the team leaders, swimming above Deon, tried to grab hold of him, but the weight of his gear and his limp body made it impossible. Another diver attempted to inflate Deon's buoyancy control device to arrest his descent, but in the confusion and darkness, the attempt failed. They were watching their friend, their teammate, slip away from them. The physical laws of diving are unforgiving. As Deon descended, the immense pressure would have compressed the air in his buoyancy control device and the neoprene of his wetsuit, making him increasingly negative buoyant. This accelerated his fall. He was now sinking faster and faster into the crushing blackness of the cave's main chamber. The support divers were faced with a horrific choice: continue the chase into depths for which they were not prepared, risking their own lives with almost no chance of success, or let him go. With heavy hearts, they had to make the only rational decision. They had to save themselves. They watched helplessly as Deon's light grew fainter and fainter before being extinguished by the abyss. Deon Dreyer fell into the void, his body eventually coming to rest on a ledge nearly 270 meters from the surface. Down in the eternal cold and darkness, far beyond the reach of any rescue, his silent descent was complete. For the divers who survived, the ascent was a somber and harrowing journey. Each minute of their decompression stops filled with the awful reality of what they had just witnessed. They surfaced with the devastating news. Deon Dreyer was gone. He had been claimed by the cave. The mission had shifted from one of exploration and preparation to one of tragedy and loss, leaving an indelible scar on everyone involved. The news of Deon Dreyer's death sent shockwaves through the South African diving community and beyond. The priority became informing Deon's parents, Theo and Marie Dreyer. Their grief was compounded by the fact that his body could not be recovered. The immense technical challenges were deemed insurmountable at the time. Deon's final resting place was consecrated to the deep. The lack of a body meant there could be no true closure. For 10 long years, the story of Deon Dreyer became an integral part of the mythology of Bushman's Hole. Every team that dived Bushman's Hole did so with the knowledge that Deon was down there. It seemed destined to remain that way forever, until a decade later, another intrepid diver would stumble upon the ghost of Bushman's Hole. 10 years after Deon Dreyer's disappearance, technical diving had evolved. Into this arena stepped Dave Shaw, an airline pilot whose meticulous planning made him an extraordinary deep diver. Shaw's passion was the most challenging submerged caves. He earned a reputation for safely executing dives others deemed impossible. He mastered the rebreather, allowing for long, deep dives. By 2004, Dave Shaw set his sights on Bushman's Hole. The cave's depth presented the ultimate challenge. He collaborated with local experts, including Don Shirley. Dave Shaw was a pioneer on the verge of writing a tragic chapter in the history of Bushman's Hole. On October 28, 2004, Dave Shaw prepared to make history, aiming for a new depth record using a closed-circuit rebreather and to lay a new exploration line at the bottom of Bushman's Hole. The dive was the culmination of months of rigorous planning. Every aspect had been calculated, from gas mixtures to the long decompression schedule. As he submerged, Shaw was focused. The light faded, replaced by the silence and darkness of the deep cave. He passed 200 meters, entering a realm where very few humans have ever been. Reaching the cave floor at 270 meters, he achieved his goal. But as he worked, something unexpected entered the beam. He had made a discovery far more significant than any record. Lying on a ledge, almost perfectly preserved, was a human body clad in old-fashioned diving gear. Dave Shaw knew immediately. The stories, the legends, the 10-year-old mystery, it was all true. He was staring at the remains of Dion Dreyer, the ghost of Bushman's Hole. The discovery transformed his dive to something somber. The 9-hour journey back replayed the image of Dion Dreyer. The triumph evaporated, replaced by responsibility. As he surfaced, the first words he spoke were about the body he had found. The news was staggering, solving a decade-old mystery. For Dave Shaw, it was a beginning and an overwhelming obligation. A new, far more dangerous ambition began to take root. For a man with Dave Shaw's character, built on a foundation of integrity and a pilot's sense of duty, leaving a fellow diver at the bottom of a cave was simply unthinkable. The discovery weighed on him not as a burden, but as a call to action. One of the first things he did after his record-breaking dive was to seek out Dion Dreyer's parents, Theo and Marie. He knew that delivering this news would reopen old wounds, but he also knew it held the potential for closure that they had been denied for 10 agonizing years. He contacted them with the utmost sensitivity, gently explaining what he had found during his dive into the depths of Bushman's Hole. The conversation was, by all accounts, intensely emotional. For Theo and Marie, the news was a surreal shock. After a decade of silence, a stranger from Australia was telling them that their son had been found. They listened as Shaw described the scene, confirming that Dion was at peace in the deep. During this poignant exchange, Shaw did more than just relay information. He made a promise. He looked the grieving parents in the eye and gave them his word that he would go back down. He vowed that he would personally undertake the mission to recover Dion's body and bring their son home so they could finally lay him to rest. This promise was not made lightly. It was a solemn vow, a sacred pact between one diver and the family of another. It spoke volumes about the unwritten code of conduct that exists within the extreme exploration community, an ethos of mutual support and a profound respect for those who are lost in the pursuit of their passion. For the Dreyer family, Shaw's promise was an incredible gift, a beacon of hope after a decade of darkness. They placed their complete trust in this man they had never met, a man willing to risk his own life to bring them peace. This commitment now became the singular focus of Dave Shaw's life. The decision was made. The ambition was set. Dave Shaw would lead a recovery mission into the abyss. He was fully aware that this undertaking would be exponentially more dangerous and complex than his record-setting exploration dive. A body recovery at 270 meters had never been attempted before. It would require him to perform physically demanding and delicate tasks in an environment that is lethally hostile to human life, where the slightest error in judgment or equipment function would be fatal. But his promise was absolute. His course was set. He began to plan what would become his final, fateful dive. With his promise made, Dave Shaw planned a complex operation, no longer about personal achievement, but a mission of honor. He assembled an elite team, including Don Shirley, as deep support. The team would provide assistance during the long decompression. Shaw planned every minute, preparing tools for the recovery. The extreme dive profile included a rapid descent to 270 meters. The diving community reacted with awe and concern, warning of the dangers. But Shaw's resolve was unshakable, driven by duty and confidence. On January 8, 2005, the team assembled, ready to push the limits. Dave Shaw knew this mission needed a strong support team for the recovery and his own survival. He reached out to the international technical diving scene, requiring specific skills for extreme depths and pressure. Shaw handpicked each member for their abilities and calm demeanor. Don Shirley, an expert in rebreathers, was the deep support diver, waiting at 220 meters. He would provide psychological comfort and practical backup. The support structure was layered, with 8 other divers assigned specific depths and roles. They brought down extra gas cylinders for decompression and monitored the deep diver's ascent. The team at Bushman's Hole was a testament to Shaw's respect in the diving community, united to bring a diver home. Dave Shaw's dive plan was a masterpiece, a complex blueprint for the lethal Bushman's Hole. Born from his pilot-like mind, every variable was calculated. The aggressive profile aimed for a swift descent to 270 meters. Shaw had only 5 minutes to recover the body. Any complication would dramatically increase the risk. The ascent was the longest part of the plan, scheduled for 12 grueling hours of decompression. Slow, staged decompression was essential to safely off-gas. Ascending too quickly would be fatal. On paper, the blueprint was perfect, a calculated assault on one of Earth's most dangerous places. yet even the most perfect plan can be shattered in an instant. Standard scuba gear would be useless for this mission. Dave Shaw and his team relied on highly specialized equipment, customized for the extreme depths. The centerpiece was his closed-circuit rebreather, which recycles exhaled breath. It scrubs carbon dioxide and injects oxygen, creating a perfect breathing mix. A key piece was the custom body bag, designed specifically for this task. The mission also required cutting tools. Shaw carried shears and a dive knife, a critical contingency. Finally, the logistics of gas supply were immense, using dozens of trimix cylinders. The sheer volume of equipment represented the mission's complexity and risk. January 8, 2005, the atmosphere at Bushman's Hole was thick with tension. Years of mystery and months of planning led to this moment. Despite outward confidence, lingering doubts were present. Many voiced concerns, calling the attempt reckless. Theo and Marie Dreyer were present, their presence adding emotional weight. Shaw was diving for them, a powerful, potentially dangerous driving force. A camera was attached to document the recovery, unaware it would record a tragedy. Shaw slipped beneath the surface and began his descent. At 6:15 a.m. on January 8, 2005, Dave Shaw submerged into Bushman's Hole, leaving the light behind. He descended efficiently, following the shot line into the abyss, a solitary figure in immense pressure and darkness. His dive light cut through the black void, illuminating the guideline. The pressure mounted as he passed depths where most turned back. Shaw continued his rapid descent towards the cave floor. In under 12 minutes he arrived at the bottom, 270 meters deep. He was now at the site where Dion Dreyer had rested. He immediately went to work, captured by his helmet camera, with only minutes to complete the recovery. The most dangerous phase was about to begin. Shaw's light found Dion Dreyer's body. He moved to secure the body bag, but unforeseen complications arose. Dion's body was stiff and partially fused to the cave floor. Trapped gases made the body unexpectedly buoyant. Dion's body was entangled in the exploration line. Time was running out, and the task was proving far more difficult. He was alone, fighting against time and unforeseen circumstances. A cascade of failures was about to be set in motion. The intense physical exertion caused Dave Shaw's breathing to become rapid and heavy. This was the critical turning point. In a closed-circuit rebreather, the diver's exhalations are passed through a chemical scrubber that removes carbon dioxide. However, if the diver's carbon dioxide production exceeds the scrubber's capacity, a situation known as a scrubber breakthrough, the consequences are catastrophic. The gas being returned to the diver for inhalation becomes progressively poisoned with carbon dioxide. This condition, hypercapnia, causes severe shortness of breath, confusion, and ultimately, a sudden loss of consciousness. It is a silent, insidious killer, and at 270 meters, Shaw was in its lethal grip. As his cognitive functions began to fail, his movements, captured on the helmet camera, became slower and less purposeful. The narcosis from the immense pressure, combined with the toxic effects of the carbon dioxide, was overwhelming his ability to think clearly and solve the complex problems he faced. His powerful dive light, which he had placed on the cave floor to illuminate his workspace, was now a hindrance. Its intense beam, reflected by the silt he was kicking up, would have created a blinding whiteout, further disorienting him. He was trapped in a maelstrom of his own making, a swirling cloud of silt and confusion. The final fatal error likely occurred as he struggled. It is believed that the powerful light cable became entangled around his arms or the body bag, effectively tying him to the bottom. In his compromised state, he would have been unable to recognize or solve this simple but deadly problem. The helmet camera footage shows his breathing growing more labored, his movements becoming weaker. He was losing his fight. The man renowned for his calm control and meticulous planning was now a victim of the very environment he had sought to master. The mission of recovery had turned into a desperate struggle for his own survival. Finally, his breathing ceased. Dave Shaw lost consciousness and slumped to the cave floor, entangled with the body he had promised to bring home. The rebreather, his mechanical life support, fell silent. He had succumbed to the combined effects of extreme pressure, physical overexertion, and carbon dioxide poisoning. Far above, his friend Don Shirley waited at his 220-meter support stop, anxiously scanning the darkness below for a light that would never appear. The mission had failed in the most tragic way imaginable. Dave Shaw, the titan of deep diving, had perished in the abyss, becoming the second ghost of Bushman's Hole. At the 220-meter mark, Don Shirley hovered in the cold, black water, a solitary sentinel waiting for his friend. According to the plan, Shaw should have been ascending towards him by now. As the minutes ticked by, stretching far beyond the scheduled rendezvous time, a dreadful realization began to dawn on Shirley. Something was terribly wrong. He strained his eyes, searching the impenetrable darkness below for any sign of Shaw's powerful light, but there was nothing. The silence from the deep was absolute and ominous. The meticulously planned timeline had been broken, and every passing second increased the likelihood of a catastrophic outcome. Shirley was now faced with an impossible decision. His training and every survival instinct told him to stick to his own dive plan and begin his ascent. Venturing deeper in an unplanned rescue attempt would almost certainly be a suicide mission, dooming them both. Yet, the thought of his friend in trouble on the bottom was agonizing. Battling the narcotic effects of the depth and a growing sense of dread, he made the courageous but perilous decision to descend further, hoping to find Shaw and render aid. He dropped another 25 meters, pushing his own physiological and equipment limits, but the abyss offered no clues, no light, no sign of life. The descent took a heavy toll on Shirley. The increased pressure affected his inner ear, causing severe vertigo and disorientation. He was now in grave danger himself. Realizing the futility and immense risk of continuing, he made the heart-wrenching decision to turn back and begin his own ascent. His journey to the surface was a torturous ordeal, both physically and emotionally. He was suffering from severe decompression sickness, and the knowledge that he was leaving his friend behind weighed on him with crushing finality. The support divers who met him on his ascent knew from the look in his eyes that the worst had happened. As Don Shirley finally surfaced after his own 9-hour ascent, the news he carried was devastating. Dave Shaw was not coming back. The mood at the site, which had been one of tense anticipation, collapsed into one of shock and profound grief. The Dreyer family, who had waited with such hope, now faced a double tragedy. The man who had promised to bring their son home had now been lost to the same dark place. The support team, a group of the world's best divers, were left helpless, their perfect plan shattered by the unforgiving reality of the deep. The mission was over, and Bushman's Hole had claimed another victim. In the days following the tragic dive, a somber mood of grief and disbelief settled over the international diving community. The loss of Dave Shaw, a figure so respected for his caution and expertise, was a profound shock. The mission, which had been followed with such anticipation, had ended in the worst possible way. The immediate focus shifted to the recovery of Don Shirley, who was suffering from serious decompression-related injuries, and to supporting the devastated team and the Dreyer family. For a time it seemed that Dave Shaw, like Dion Dreyer before him, would remain entombed in the deep forever, his final moments a mystery. However, the cave had one last unexpected twist to reveal. 4 days after the fatal dive, members of the support team were conducting a routine dive to recover the expensive equipment, guidelines and gas cylinders, that had been left in the cave. As they worked at a depth of around 20 meters near the roof of the main chamber, they made a startling discovery. 2 bodies entangled together were floating slowly towards the surface. In a bizarre and macabre turn of events, the trapped gases from decomposition within Dion Dreyer's old dry suit had provided enough buoyancy to lift both him and the still entangled Dave Shaw from the bottom. The recovery of the bodies was a solemn and surreal affair. Dave Shaw's promise had been fulfilled, but at the ultimate cost. Dion Dreyer was finally returned to his family, who could now lay him to rest after a decade of waiting. Dave Shaw was also brought home, a hero who had paid the highest price for his act of compassion. Along with the bodies, a crucial piece of evidence was recovered, the small video camera that had been mounted on Shaw's helmet. This silent witness held the objective, irrefutable record of what had happened in the abyss. The footage from the camera was reviewed by Don Shirley and other experts. It was a chilling and deeply moving experience, providing a second-by-second account of the dive's final moments. It confirmed the timeline, the unforeseen complications with the body, the immense physical struggle, the blinding silt, and the final tragic unraveling. It showed Shaw's breathing becoming labored, and his movement slowing as hypercapnia took hold. The camera recorded everything right up to the moment he lost consciousness. It was a heartbreaking but invaluable record, a silent testament to his bravery, and a crucial tool for understanding the chain of events that led to the tragedy, ensuring that vital lessons would be learned from his sacrifice. In the days following the fatal dive, grief hung over Bushman's Hole. The mission had ended in failure. Dave Shaw was lost. The team began dismantling the expedition, No one expected to find Dave Shaw. Then, 4 days later, the cave revealed a macabre surprise. 2 bodies, tangled together, were ascending. This ghostly ascent was a bizarre turn of events. The support team guided the bodies to the surface. In a strange twist of fate, the abyss had given them back. The recovery of both bodies was a solemn moment. For Theo and Marie Dreyer, the moment was overwhelming. After 10 long years, their son Dion was finally home, alongside the hero who made it possible. Their long wait for closure was over, but it had come at a terrible cost. Dave Shaw was mourned as a hero. Theo and Marie could finally lay their son to rest. They would remain forever grateful to Dave Shaw for his incredible act of compassion. It was a powerful narrative of sacrifice, honor, and the unforgiving nature of the deep. A cautionary tale, but also an inspiring one. Dave Shaw's death brought closure to the Dryers, but it also served as a stark lesson. Among the equipment recovered with Dave Shaw's body was one small but incredibly significant item, the waterproof video camera that had been mounted on his dive helmet. This device, intended to document a historic recovery, had instead become a silent witness to a tragedy. It held the objective, unfiltered truth of what had happened during those fatal minutes on the floor of Bushman's Hole. The decision was made to review the footage, a task that fell to Don Shirley and a few other key members of the team. It was a harrowing and deeply emotional undertaking, watching their friends' final moments, but it was essential to fully understand the chain of events. The footage was a revelation. It provided a clear second-by-second timeline that answered many of the questions surrounding the incident. The camera captured the initial success of the descent and the moment Shaw encountered Dion's body. It clearly showed the unforeseen complications, the body's unexpected buoyancy, and the difficulty in getting it into the bag. Most critically, the footage documented Shaw's increasing physical exertion. The audio recorded his breathing becoming rapid and labored, a clear sign that he was generating carbon dioxide faster than his rebreather could scrub it. The experts watching knew they were witnessing the onset of fatal hypercapnia. As the footage continued, Shaw's movements became less coordinated. The camera's perspective lurched as he struggled, the beam from his powerful dive light reflecting off the swirling silt, creating a disorienting whiteout. The visual evidence confirmed the theory that he had become entangled in the lines, his own, and possibly Dion's. In his compromised state, suffering from narcosis and CO2 poisoning, he was unable to diagnose or solve the problem. The camera kept recording as his struggle weakened until finally he became still. It was a heartbreaking but priceless record providing definitive proof of the cascade of failures that led to his death. The existence of this footage transformed the legacy of the dive. It moved the story from the realm of speculation into the realm of fact. The video became an invaluable educational tool, used in advanced technical diving courses around the world to teach the brutal lessons learned from the tragedy. It serves as a powerful illustration of the dangers of overexertion at depth, the insidious nature of carbon dioxide poisoning, and the importance of having contingency plans for when things go wrong. Dave Shaw's final dive, captured on film, became his last and most enduring contribution to the sport he loved, a silent testament to his courage and a stark warning for all who dare to explore the deep. Dave Shaw's final dive wasn't one failure but a cascade of interconnected events. The plan, though meticulous, met unforeseen difficulties. This led to unplanned physical exertion at extreme depth. His rebreather couldn't keep up with the CO2, leading to hypercapnia, impairing his judgment. Silt reduced visibility to near zero, creating a blinding whiteout. Shaw became entangled, unable to escape. Unexpected challenges, exertion, disorientation, and entanglement created a perfect storm, highlighting the abyss's unforgiving nature. The story of Dave Shaw and Dion Dreyer serves as a somber case study from which enduring lessons have been drawn. The most fundamental lesson is a reaffirmation of the prime directive of any dive to return safely. The incident reminds all explorers to be willing to call off a dive at the first sign of a plan unraveling. A crucial lesson relates to the dangers of hypercapnia, leading to revised training protocols worldwide. The footage of Shaw's labored breathing has undoubtedly saved lives. Many now advocate that a diver lost in such an inaccessible place should be left at peace. Dave Shaw's death has become a powerful argument for prioritizing the lives of the living. In the end, the legacy of Dave Shaw is one of sacrifice and education. His final recorded moments have become one of the most important safety lessons in the history of diving. Respect the deep, Know your absolute limits, and understand that no objective is worth your life. Dive to return.